Imagine a world where the phrase one size fits all is applied to the entirety of the American education system. It's absurd to think that a term we often associate with an article of clothing can be used in teaching a vast diversity of students in a learning environment, right? Well, that is exactly the standard that Daniel Kuretz, Harvard professor and contributor to the book Debating the Future of American Education, argues is being imposed on students with the No Child Left Behind Act being put into place. When the No Child Left Behind Act first was put up and into effect back in 2001, it was stated that the primary purpose of this act is to ensure that the students in every public school achieve the important learning goals while being educated in safe classrooms by well-prepared teachers. To increase achievement, the law requires that school districts assume responsibility for all of their students reaching 100% of the predetermined student proficiency levels within 12 years of the test assessing important academic content. Well, what brought the U.S. to this decision that the act needed to be put into place? According to Charlie Sykes, a scholar from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee and American author, the various waves of education reform, including the NCLB and various others, were launched in part on the basis and claims that the United States leadership position in the world was being undermined by the tragic legacy of the education mediocrity. In translation, meaning the United States education system was lacking and mediocre at best. The NCLB's solution to that being to introduce a standards-based assessment focusing on how well a student performs relative to a prescribed set of content standards rather than relative to a norm peer-based group of standards. R. Rothman, author of Measuring Up Standards, Assessments, and School Reforms, argues that the specific standards remove the secrecy and ambiguity surrounding the traditional testing, provides a focal point on which teachers and students can collaborate in reaching common goals. And while in theory having a set of standards so that all children can learn philosophy is embraced, an idea in which is strongly advocated by Thurnstorm and Thurnstorm, scholars and co-authors of the No Excuse, Closing the Interracial Learning Gap in Learning. It does not take into consideration the fact that students vary markedly in their capabilities, So presenting them all with the same task under the same conditions would entail either dumbing instruction down to the lowest common denominator or condemning low-ability students to frequent failure. While Kuretz points to in his argument against NCLB, he also states that the standardized tests fail to recognize the problem of finding reasonable methods for different kinds of kids without condemning low-achieving students to boring and unproductive schooling. Under such circumstances, the NCLB Act itself contradicts their stated primary goal of ensuring the students in every public school achieve important learning goals while being educated. While the No Child Left Behind Act has a few decently redeemable ideas, when applied to the Act in an overall statement, scholars have proved it to be ineffective in its overall goal acts and aims to achieve. The NCLB Act tells all students that you need to know all of these predetermined standards of education, making the school districts focus on these specific topics and plan the primary amount of their children's education around these few topics when compared to the amount of knowledge that they could be learning is very small. The No Child Left Behind Act unfortunately takes the primary reason of going to school to have the chance to be taught and learn and turns it into a manufactured system of equality.